Hello there. For the longest time, Starfleet and the Federation enjoyed and basked in an era of peace and exploration, a golden age, if you will. Despite the protestations to the contrary of not being a military organization, which I believe Starfleet at least partially was, they were quite proficient at building combat, or at least combat adjacent craft, and that's what we're starting with today. That would be the Peregrine class Courier. Before we get started, like, share, subscribe, comment down below. If you really feel like it, hit the bell notification icon. If you like this video, do please share it, as the channel is growing and I'd like to see it grow even more, because I would like to commit more of my time to doing this. And at the moment I am able to commit for a bit, but long term it would be something I would like to do. So with that out of the way, let's get started on the Peregrine class. The exact date of development for this classification of vessel is unknown. Interestingly, for a Federation attack fighter, they were actually originally designed for civilian uses. They are used by both civilian agencies, individual private citizens, and government, as in Starfleet, all simultaneously, with obviously variations on the design to accommodate for this. This vessel is so ubiquitous and so widespread, you even see it in the mirror universe with the Terran Resistance using these crafts much in the same way as the Maquis would do in the Prime universe. They were small vessels about the same size as a runabout, perhaps 20 meters in length, although reports in that do vary, but that could be variations on class, slight tweaks to the design, say, to what it's meant to be doing. It's an extremely capable space frame, capable of mounting a variety of different weapons, as well as being customized for different tasks. In its original stock form, as this was originally a civilian craft, which is what we'll start with, its classification was as a courier, a nice way to get around calling it a defensive craft, I might add. This version was actually designed for intercolonial transport. It's warp and impulse capable, pretty sturdy design, but was actually designed to ferry light cargo around, and would have only been lightly defended with shields and maybe a phaser. The Maquis, of course, would substantially modify these crafts into combat vessels. With their robust space frame and combat-orientated design anyway, Starfleet had always clearly intended these vessels for a dual role. How they were used by Starfleet is a little different, we'll get to in a second. The Maquis would learn, because of the variable space frames, the versatility of design, and the adaptability of the design, they were able to mount a wide variety of weapons, including photon torpedoes, disruptors, Type 8 phasers, as well as even, potentially, a cloaking device, or probably with its limited power grid, not for very long, but all the same, they were able to utilize these special features of this robust little design until the Condor class became the more ubiquitous craft used by the Maquis. From a Starfleet point of view, again, these are widely used by many Federation colonies. In the 2380s, these are certainly parts of Earth and Mars's defense forces, used by Starfleet Academy as training craft, but also used as fighter interceptors to intercept medium threats or problems within the system. An escaping shuttle, some thief, some pirate, whatever, someone who's there who shouldn't be, will be intercepted by one or more of these small little craft. With their warp and impulse capability and decent firepower, they made good little interceptors. Starfleet, again, did originally design these ships as a non-military craft, but they were quickly adapted to be a military role, not just by the Maquis, but also by Starfleet at the onset of the Dominion War. In their combat role, the variant of this fighter, of course, had strong armor, good shields for a vessel of its size, and I have done a video previously on how starfighters in Star Trek are not that useful, because they're too vulnerable to attack, but under specialist circumstances they can be useful. And as a flanking vessel, as a distraction for the enemy, and as something to just peck at them like a swarm of hornets, these little fighters actually did prove quite useful. In addition to that, they could be, as I said, upgunned to carry more threatening weaponry. It's just they couldn't take the damage dished out usually by the enemy they were fighting. The military version of this craft used by Starfleet was equipped with 2 pulse phaser cannons, a rear phaser, a forward phaser, as well as 6 micro torpedo launchers. These could again be variable, but think of them as being a bit like the photonic missiles used by the Delta Flyer, developed by the USS Voyager in the Delta Quadrant. Maybe not exactly the same weapon, the fact that they're a micro torpedo, not a missile, they probably didn't have quite the same range or speed or power, but they could cluster fire these little bastards, and they had 6 launchers. They didn't carry many of them on board. The ship also, though, did have transporters, an onboard replicator, and decent cargo capacity, which was easy to flip into a medical role or a troop carrying role for these extremely versatile little craft during times of war, when ships and other resources are at a premium. Having these little couriers buzzing around in numbers was actually quite useful. Basically, you could use them for moving dignitaries around, moving supplies, weapons and equipment quickly around the local star system or System 2 system. They were too small for the Jem'Hadar maybe to go too far out of the way to attack, but they had proven themselves in the hands of the Maquis of actually being threatening to the Cardassians when in numbers. At least they were a threat to the Cardassians, as the Dominion proved, though these small ships were no match for the Jem'Hadar. But again, from a Dominion point of view, they got a choice of attacking the starbase or attacking a major starship. They see a little vessel the size of a runabout, fighter or not, they're pretty much going to ignore it and deal with the bigger threat. That meant these ships had the sort of element of surprise, and also the sort of don't bother us, we're too insignificant and not worth your time kind of look. But again, in numbers, they could be quite useful. Despite their affiliation with the Maquis, the Federation continued to use the Peregrine class, despite what may have been a little bit of stigma associated with it being used by a terrorist organization. But bear in mind, again, these were used by civilians very widely, heavily used in the borders of the demilitarized zone by the Federation colonists. They were also used by Federation colonies all over the Alpha and Beta quadrants. These ships were mass produced in huge numbers, not just for military but also for civilian purposes. Again, by the 2380s, we still see that these craft are still useful and in service at Earth, being used as part of the planetary defenses, as well as very likely part of the Mars defense perimeter. Quite useful, very versatile, originally designed as more of a light transport and courier, but that does speak volumes to the versatility of this little ship. We know that runabouts could be pretty versatile in and of themselves, but a runabout was more of an evolution of this ship, in that a runabout had, although could be given special weapons pods and modifications, it was no fighting vessel. These ships had maneuverability and combat versatility in their corner. Their narrow profile from most angles, their extreme maneuverability and speed, especially at impulse speeds, gave them an edge when dealing with other small craft and interceptors. And in numbers, they could be a threat to larger starships that couldn't eliminate them quick enough. If they were fast enough, maneuverable enough, and tactically savvy enough, these ships could make a dent, as we saw at things like the Battle of Chintoka and other areas where these craft proved themselves very useful, mostly in a defensive flanking role for larger vessels, screening them against Jem'Hadar fighters. It also negated the Jem'Hadar's sort of, to a degree, only to a degree, suicide tactic, because these fighters got in the way. The attack ship might not get near the larger vessel because these fighters, it'll hit them first. But that's probably, again, a more specialized niche sort of fringe benefit of these craft. We don't really want to use them as cannon fodder, do we? That's never what Starfleet would do. Of course not. Again, for a non-military organization, they build quite effective fighting vehicles. When used in conjunction with Defiant class and Akira class and Saber class vessels, these ships performed extremely well. And when in the right hands of a skilled engineer and a good pilot and someone with good tactical experience such as Chakotay, they could be very effective. And yes, I know Chakotay's ship was one of the Condor class, but you're not telling me he didn't at least at some point in his Maquis career be aboard one of these things. Anyway, that is the Peregrine class fighter. A ship that stands out again because it is a military ship which is also used by civilians in a variable form, at least. That's a bit like a private citizen owning a modern day strike fighter to just be their pleasure plane. Forget a biplane or propeller, piston driven plane. No, you get yourself a nice jet fighter, but we'll take all the weapons off, so it's fine. Seems unlikely, but money's not a thing, and whatever, I suppose. Beautiful little ship, lovely little design, very angular for a Starfleet ship, but generally we know that pointy usually means aggressive and means military, and these things do have a pointed little beak, much like their namesake, the Peregrine Falcon. But what do you guys think of this wonderful, lovely little fighting craft employed by the Federation, the Maquis, and the Terrans just to name a few. Let me know comments below, and that is the end of this video. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.